Welcome to the Hardwood Time Capsule podcast. This episode features one of the great characters of the NBL. Vulnerable, honest and hilarious all at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr Russell Hinder. Mr Russell Hinder, welcome to the podcast.
Andrew, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I've got you good, mate. I've got you good. Thanks for coming on. Pleasure to have you on. I'm
Bloody terrifying, mate.
No, don't be terrified. I've been looking forward to this the more I prepared for it because I reached out to a few people. Obviously, as the same with the listeners, I watched you, throughout your career and seen you playing and that. But this podcast is we dig a little bit deeper than that. And we look at the person and we look at, I guess, the hurdles that you've had to overcome. And in your circumstances, there were quite a lot throughout your pro career in terms of teams changing and getting close to championships and stuff, which we'll touch on soon. But the feedback I was getting was that you're one of the looser units back in the NBL, and you're a bit of fun, and and so I was looking forward to on that scale as well. And so, look, I'll go through just for those that are sort of our kids' age. I'll go through your career shortly, but right now we find you in Arizona. So can you let the listeners know sort of how you've ended up there, what you're up to these days, and what's going on, what keeps you busy?
Of course, Drew. Thanks for having me. Like I said, this is terrifying, and I hope I don't torpedo your amazing podcast and what you're doing. And I see you've had some actual good basketball players on, and now you're doing some charity work. So that's good. That'll get you to the front of the line when the pearly gates come calling for you. You can say, well, I did have Russ Hinder on my basketball podcast. Why am I in Arizona? Over 21 years ago, I married a smoke show of a California girl, Jen, and we met in college at USF, and she was with me the whole time in Australia. We have three amazing kids. Ollie's 18 years old now, for God's sake. Terrifying. CJ, my daughter Callie, is 15, about to turn 16. My other daughter Matilda is 13. So all three were born in Australia, all three in different cities. Ollie in Newcastle when I was with the Hunter Pirates, CJ in Bondi when I was with the Kings, and Matilda in Townsville. So, and then I retired. I got a job. I don't know if you want to get into that, but I was miserable. And one day, she's from San Diego. She sort of looked up from our dinner table, tears in her eyes, and we'd never even discussed it before. And she said, "Babe, I want to go home." And I said, "Let's go." I had nothing keeping me there. My parents, my family, but we were in Townsville. They were in Sydney. We barely got to see them as it was. She has a really big, close-knit family in America and in California. So we packed up, we moved.
Yeah.
I got a job in Arizona, which was about a 5-hour drive from San Diego, coaching after-school basketball and running a company to do it. I got a year into it and realized I'm not built for sitting at a computer 15 hours a day, taking 100 phone calls a day from parents about money, about coaching, hiring and firing. And a buddy of mine through the church we were going to at the time, he was like, "Stay with me. I've got an idea. We've got a really good friend, and he's a great man, and he runs a pool cleaning company. And they'll give you a truck, they'll give you a phone, they'll give you a gas card, but you got to clean pools in Arizona." And I was so mentally messed up, not in a bad way, but I was just like, I wasn't being a great man, I wasn't being a great father, I wasn't being a great husband, just because of the stress of my job. I was like, let's go. So that was 5.5 years ago. So basically, I'm a pool cleaner in Arizona, which is the stupidest thing anyone could ever do, because it's 115 here today. I don't know what that is, maybe 40, 42, 44,
Jeez.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But I chase the sun, so I'm out at sunrise, I'm the supervisor, I'm the manager, so I look after our 7 techs. I'm the guy in the middle. The owners are up here in their air conditioned ivory tower. Um, I'm the guy in the middle looking after our techs who clean 500 plus pools every week. Um, and it affords me a lifestyle. It doesn't pay a whole ton. It's not glamorous. It's not super cool to tell people. But what it does is it allows me, I'm off work every single day to pick up my kids. I coach my kids at basketball. I get to not make every dinner, but I help out. And it keeps me outside. It keeps me away from a computer. So for now, that's what it is.
Yeah, fantastic. I think what's fantastic about it is you've sort of been in this position where you obviously did sort of the status quo thing of, getting that 9 to 5 or working in an office job, and it wasn't for you. So you actually did something about it rather than just being miserable for the next, 20, 30 years and getting that balance back. And small world, actually. My father's in the pool building industry and has been for the last 20 years. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Sometimes
There's something good. There's something really sort of noble about it, man. It's hard work, it's good work, it's honest work, and the men I work for, I sure as hell don't do this job because I love cleaning pools in Arizona. I do it because the men I work for, it's a small family-owned business,
right,
and they're just really good men. And they give me the freedom to do what I think is right, and I try and do what's right every day. But man, I did the 9 to 5 straight after I played basketball, selling radio advertising, and it was the worst decision ever. I was terrible at it because I didn't believe in it, because every time I got in the car, I plugged my phone in. Whereas then I'm going and trying to tell people, hey, you should buy radio advertising. I'm just not a good liar. Because they'd say, do you think this works? And I go, nah, not really. They'd say, okay, good meeting, get out. I'd say, okay, bye.
yeah.
So that's where I was at when my wife turned to me and said, babe, you want to live in America? I was like, hell yeah, I do. They got cheap beer and they got basketball on TV literally every night. If there's not basketball, there's football. If there's not football, there's baseball. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Pretty easy decision and a good one in the end. Thanks for being so honest with all that, and we'll dig deeper into it a bit later on or as we go, because I think that's what it's really important to share those sort of things, and for someone like yourself to be a bit vulnerable so we can actually relate, I guess, from those of us that sort of idolized you guys, and sort of put you up on a pedestal as fans, to see the vulnerable side of you guys and that sort of side
I'm
of
going
things.
to be shockingly honest. You can ask me literally anyway. You might have to bleep out some of my honesty.
Well, I mean, that's a great thing. And that's what I think everyone really appreciates, because at the end of the day, it draws the gap between us as fans and you guys as the players. So on that note, I'll take us back to your playing days and give a short synopsis of it. In 1997, you were selected to attend the infamous AIS program, and then a year later went on to the.
You want to hear a funny story about that?
Oh, won't hold you back on stories. Go for it, mate.
This might be a 15-hour podcast. Real quick, my best friend on planet Earth, Ben Arkell, he actually played 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the NBL.
Yep.
We played together at West Sydney Razorbacks. I wasn't chosen to go to the AIS. He was chosen. He was chosen from the age of 15, 16, 17. He was a homebody. He just didn't want to do it. So at 17, I finally I only started playing basketball at 15. It took me 12 games to hit to make a basket, and it was a hook shot from the free throw line. I was disgraceful. So our senior year, year 12, the summer between year 11 and year 12, we both get selected for the All-Australian camp at AIS. Daniel Egan was there. He was like the GOAT. Brad Sheridan, Dave Anderson, all these like superstar, megastar guys. And I get selected, and Ben was meant to go and live. Ben doesn't show up. Like, when I say my best friend, I don't play basketball without him and his father. They drove me to every practice. My parents worked really hard their whole life. So I get called in 4 days into the camp, the week-long camp, and I'm like, great, I'm getting sent home because I'm so bad at the sport. They've gone, well, he's shit. He can go home. They go, look, Ben didn't show up. We need someone to take his spot on the AIS team. We want you to do it.
Wow.
I'm like, how am I going to tell Gordy McLeod, Tim Mallon, Frank Arcego, Pat Hunt, Barry Barnes? No.
Yeah.
I got things going on in Sydney. My folks drive down. All of a sudden, we're eating in the cafeteria. My folks turn to me and go, you got to do this. Oh, shit. Okay. They go, great. You got 2 days to go home. Pack up. Tell everyone in Sydney you're not going to be at year 12 at Mara Stun Nass. You're going to be at Lake G. That's my AIS story.
Wow,
falling ass backwards into a situation. Mate, when you get to my rookie year, I got another one for you.
Good. Keep them coming. So I continue on from that, on from the AIS. You obviously go over in the college system, and you're at a couple of colleges there, San Francisco, and then moved to Augusta in 2000. Which I do have a question later in the podcast, which we'll touch on, just sort of that, and explain to those of us that haven't been in the college system how moves can be made and those sort of things. So we'll go over that, and then you start your pro career back where you grew up in Sydney. Playing with the good old West Sydney Razorbacks. A lot of us have good memories of the Razorbacks, and John Riley and Scotty McGregor and yourself and Arkell and those sort of guys, and then the Hunter Pirates.
Rocker.
Yeah, just a whole list.
The list goes on.
Yeah. Really, phenomenal, and some. Even in the short time they were around, there's some great rivalries with like I grew up going for the Melbourne Tigers, and I remember those rivalries the West Sydney Razorbacks had with those guys. So a real shame that didn't sort of work out long term. And then we look at the Hunter Pirates again. That's for some of our diehard fans. That's sort of that trying to sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, regurgitate the Newcastle Falcons and. Sort of bring that around. You spent was it just the 1 year over in New Zealand? You played for Otago?
Yeah, just an off season. It was 14 weeks. It was so miserable. There were 4 hours of sunshine. Ollie had just been born. Right. My wife, we were 7 weeks in. My wife came to me one day and goes, Dave, I love you to death. I'm going to California. I can't. Yeah. The sun comes up at 11 and goes down at 2. We lived in a house with Scotty McGregor for 14 weeks.
Right.
And it was just 3 hours of sunshine in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
We're like, this
not for you.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So,
fair enough. And then obviously a lot of the questions that came through when we put it out on the Instagram came from Sydney. So that brings me on to the next one. Played at the Sydney Kings for a few years and very close to success. And then obviously went on to Townsville, which is again where quite a few people shot through some messages. You had a 6 or 7 year career there was it 2008 to 2014. And then with I guess what we'll touch on soon is the highs and lows of which we touch on with every guest on this program, is really dealing with that is, to lead the Kings to 2 grand final series against the Tigers and lose them both. Obviously, as we've already established, you're reasonably emotional or have emotional sensitivity in terms of you wear your heart on your sleeve. How do you deal with something like that when you kind of get to that bridesmaid stage, but you're never the bride sort of thing? Did that rock you?
I lost 3 grand final series. Thanks so much for bringing that up. The wounded almost healed. But funnily enough, my first year in the league, I never played. I earned $14,000 for the entire year to play for the West Sydney Razorbacks. All because they had a full roster. a big fella named Brett Smith who was coming back from America, another rookie. He blows his knee out playing ABA. So I get brought in like September, and they go, "We've only got 14 grand." I'm like, "Let's go." I was like Kramer and Seinfeld, where they go, "We'll give you free coffee for life," and I was like, "Let's go." So we make the grand final that year against Adelaide. Rupert Sapple goes nuts. We walk in the locker room, and Sam McKinnon just gets his we get the runners up trophy, and it just whizzes right past my head, smashes against the wall. And I'm like, "Why'd you do that?" He goes, "I have one of them." And I'm like, oh. He goes, "What do I want another one?" Because they just lost the year before in town. And I go, yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm so mad. And I gently placed it in my bag. I was like, "Well, I'm not smashing mine." You know, my number one job that year was to carry the championship T-shirts from Sydney to Adelaide. I had the championship T-shirts, West Sydney Razorbacks champions. Robbie, come on, his kid plays for Brisbane.
Oh, Kadee.
Robbie Kadee was like, "Russ, you have one job. Don't tell anyone you have them, but if we win, have them under your chair, get them ready to get out." So now there's some nice poor people wearing those shirts with West Sydney Razorbacks. I was going to say, what happened
with those? Yeah, okay.
Then my second one was my third year in West Sydney, where we went all Australian, and Dwighty, McGregor, McKinnon, Treher. It was really, oh my God, I was like the fifth Beatle. I started on that team, and it was phenomenal. It was so cool. And we lose to Sydney with CJ, Nelly, Ebby Arago's nuts. We have them in game 5, 12,000 people at the entertainment center going nuts. And Ebby Arago just goes, what? Game over. And it was like, I couldn't believe it. But then the one with the Kings, that one hurt. Like, I was still young with the 2 Razorbacks, and you still think, I'll be back.
Yeah.
The one with the Kings, we should have won. We set a record for like regular season wins, which is like kissing your sister. Sure, it's great, but it doesn't really mean much. And then we just, like, Jason Smith blew his shoulder out. Our import at the time, he pulled his hammy in game 1 in Melbourne. I had this sinus thing going on. But that one really hurt. That was the one I wanted. But thanks for bringing that up. You know, that was awesome.
So what do you do after that? Do you just get back on with it, or because obviously, I guess.
We wanted to run it back, obviously, and then we had the infamous Tim Johnston Firepower. I don't know if you remember. We were sponsored by Firepower. He sponsored like the South Sydney Rabbitohs, the Perth Rugby Union team. He had a race car. And he was selling this biofuel technology thing. Complete farce, complete sham.
Yeah.
He like swindled people out of millions of dollars. I got offered, so my biggest contract ever was 120 grand. That was from the Kings that year. I got offered like 140 for 3, like per.
Yeah.
And I took it to stay in Sydney, and we were going to run it back. This guy just runs out of money or something. Like, the club folds, it all explodes. Gorge goes to the Dragons with Wertho. So many guys lose their career, lose their job. If Ben Pepper doesn't leave Townsville to be with his kids, I'm out of the league. I'm pouring beers at the Sutherland RSL. I had an interview on the Monday. Gleason calls me on a Saturday and he didn't even want me. He wanted Ian Crosswhite. So there's only 2 people on this planet that I would wish syphilis upon. And Tim Johnston of Firepower is definitely one of them. He's a rotten human. He deserves to go to prison and be treated like people get treated in prison. And the other is my college coach, who was an arse, but he's on. But Tim Johnston ruined everything, lied to everyone. We were all ready to go, and he just ruined, I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, just horrible. That I remember that situation as it went down, and thankfully for all the Sydney fans, eventually things came good for the Sydney Kings and got back to it. Now the other part, just before we sort of move on, is 2006. So you've gone from someone who hadn't touched a basketball to 15, and then eventually ended up playing for the Boomers in the Commonwealth Games. So that's from one extreme to the other. How was the Commonwealth Games experience?
Mate, I remember the first ever phone call I got from Brian Gorgon, and I am a participating member of the Church of Gorgon. I need you to know that. That man is phenomenal. I just signed with Newcastle with Hunter Pirates, and I went to work out at Broadmeadow. I'd just been in New Zealand. That was a shitty situation. Me and McGregor had not been working very hard because we hated it there. So it was just me and him. So we'd practice, we'd drink, we'd practice, we'd drink. We come home. I'm not in great shape. I get to my car in Newcastle and my phone rings. Hey, is this Russell Hinder? Is this Rusty Hinder? I go, yeah. This is Brian Gorgon. And I look at my phone and I'm like, do you mean Dusty? Did you want Dusty Reichart? Because this is Rusty Hinder. I don't think you want me. He goes, no, we want you. And I go, I'll lose my shit. I'm like, oh my God. So my wife's still in America because I'd literally been back. So it was only for a camp. It was 2004 maybe? 2005 maybe? 2005. And it was that off year. You know, when the Boomers have an off year, all the guys who are like fringe guys, they get a chance, they do a China tour, they do this tour, they play a few New Zealand games. It was that year. I didn't make the team. I went in, Nick Popovich goes, let me take your skin folds. And I go, let's see if we can break 100. Nick Popovich did not think that was very, very funny for anyone listening. Nick Popovich is like the guru of fitness, and he's gorgeous right-hand man. And I think I tested at like 98 skin folds. And I'm like, all right, yeah, that's really good for me. And Popovich goes, bigs need to be under 50, guards need to be under 40. You're almost double. That's pathetic. I'm like, whatever, bro. Give me my free stuff. So I get a shirt. So anyway, that's 2004. I go back to Newcastle. I'm like, nah, I want in. So I don't make the team. I don't even get. And I go, nah, I want to do it. So I changed a lot. I changed diet. I changed practice. I changed habits. 2006 comes around and I make the Commonwealth Games team. I'm just like, I couldn't believe it, man. I couldn't believe it. It was the greatest thing ever. Some friendships there. Jacob Holmes, Brad Davidson were forged. That will never be broken. It was incredible to play at in your home stadium. The problem was we were playing New Zealand. New Zealand had just finished 4th at the World Championships in 2004, but no one really knew that. Everyone was like, the Aussie Boomers, they'll win. It was all NBL guys, and Jason Smith thankfully goes bang, bang in the grand final in Melbourne, and we win the gold. Best thing ever. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It was a great day that I was there at, I think it was called Vodafone Arena back then, but it's now called John Cain Arena. And that was a good day. I think that was sort of the pushing back up with the Boomers, I think, because we'd sort of been in a little low patch there, and obviously then New Zealand had a crazy run to the point where they were playing off for bronze in the World Champs. So
I think that was the transition from Barry Barnes to Gorge, and then guys were like, there was an older guard of Lahoff, Bear, Tony Ronaldson, Brett Maher, Shane Heal, those guys, and then you had the young crop of Paddy, Joe, Daly, those guys, Bogut. So I think it was a bit of and I got a quick one for you. told you this could take a while. So I go from where we're staying in the village, and I go, I'm gonna just go get some food because there was this entire tent just full of food. So I'm going down, and there's a line, 1,000 people in this line, two lines, and I'm like, what's that? And it's along a path, and I go, what is this? I turn around, and Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, is just walking, just him and like maybe the Premier or someone just walking through the village. I go, it's like my parents love the Queen and Phil the Greek and all of that. And I'm like, that's bloody Phil. I look down and there's like security guards and it's the Queen. The bloody Queen's. I go, I got to get me some of this. So I'm standing in line. I got my little digi camera out because didn't have phones in that day.
So this is in the athlete's village?
It's in the village.
Yeah.
And she's just doing like a visit. So she's doing her wave. She's coming. She's doing a wave. She's doing a wave. And I'm like, I got to do it. Like, I'm a basketball player. Someone does this to me. We got to go.
You did not.
She's asked, the Queen's asking me for a high five. I can see it. This is a true story. I swear to God. I got photos of like, she's there. That's secure. So she's like right here. And I go, hey. And everyone's like, hey. And I'm taking a photo down with this one. And I go, what? High five. I get the Queen high five. Oh, right here. Oh, right there. Security guard just punches me right in the face. But I high five the Queen. I don't give a shit. Look at this guy.
That could be the greatest story we will ever have on the podcast. That is unbelievable.
Oh God, no. You'll beat that next episode, but that's pretty cool for
high
me.
High-fiving the Queen. Because you must have known that punch was coming once you did it.
Mate, I didn't. Yeah, I saw it. She had 4 in front and 4 behind. I knew it was coming. From a guy, I didn't even know which end of the basketball to shoot at the hoop when I first started, like 10 years earlier than that.
Yeah,
I'll take that. Anyway, sorry.
No,
I'll just keep interrupting.
No, that's great. Keep the stories coming. With you, obviously, as you just mentioned, then saying you hadn't touched a basketball 10 years earlier. So, what was it that you were doing growing up? Were you playing a different sport? Were you playing any sports? Well, you grew up in Sydney, right?
I am, Carol. My parents were just the greatest, and they live up on the Central Coast now, and they worked so hard. They were like, one sport. You get one sport. Because I'm not spending my weekends driving from cricket to footy to soccer. So from 5 to 10, I played soccer like my older brother did. I got one older brother, 5.5 years older. Played soccer from 5 to 10, but because I was a bit taller than everyone, they just put me in goals, and I said, nope, not enough action. At 10 to 15, I actually played Australian rules football with a guy named Lenny Hayes. His dad was like, hey, we lived literally opposite, best friends in the whole world. His younger brother's first word in the whole world was Russ. That's how much time I spent there. He went on to captain St Kilda and is just a legend in AFL. He was like, there. Come play Aussie rules.
Yeah, coaching.
Yeah. He really? That's fantastic. He's just incredible. And then at 15, so I made a rep team, like a footy rep team. And I was like, I didn't take it seriously. It was fun. I was playing with Lenny. I was screwing around. Made a rep team, get there, and they beat the crap out of me, bro. Like hitting, tackling me. We're doing tackle drills for an hour at rep practice. I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm nowhere near tough enough for this. I'm a puss from way back. So this is not for me. That's where Ben Arkell and Jim Arkell and the whole family came in and were like, hey, if you don't like that, come indoors. You don't have to be in the rain and wet and mud in Sydney, and no one's going to tackle you deliberately. Many people will want to punch you in the face really hard, but that'll come later. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So played one sport at a time, soccer for 5, Aussie rules for 5, and then basketball.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. You're playing AFL up in sort of rugby heartland, but I guess if you're not keen on the hitting.
We did a trip to Melbourne, it was a one-off game where our all-star team versus the Melbourne all-star team. We competed. We lost on the buzzer by 153 points. It was really close, really, and we got our little butts on the bus back to Sydney. We thought we were pretty good on the drive down. On the drive back up, it was much quieter bus. We hopped a flogging. We got off. It was 15, under 15 or whatever, under 14. These guys are all jacked. They're in the weight room and stuff. Yeah. We're like, oh shit, we're not ready for this. They blasted it.
Yeah, it's religion down here.
Oh yeah, we learned that real quick.
Yeah, and I guess we've touched on your AIS and experience, and then you obviously go over to college. When you go over to college, is that something that you wanted to do as soon as you're at the AIS, or did you consider staying a second year at the AIS? What was the thought process there?
Fantastic. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be at the AIS anymore. Gordy McLeod kicked the crap out of me, and rightfully so. He was right, I was wrong. And I love Gordy to death. I came home, went back to Sydney, just didn't know what to do. Wasn't invited because I finished 12th grade at the AIS. So they were like, nah, we're good with you. And I wasn't that good. So I went home, worked at a video store. Now, kids, before streaming services, there used to be this thing called VHS. And I worked at a video store 4 days a week. I played ABA, or what's it called now, NBL 1, for the Sydney Kings youth team. Played awesome. Andre Lafleur was my coach. I mean, holy crap, that's awesome. It was awesome. We had so much fun. We had such a great time. Played really well, was MVP of that. And not to be a bummer, but I had a really close friend of mine die right then, randomly, like completely surprised. And San Francisco, out of nowhere, Mike Dunlap knew someone at San Francisco, knew a coach at San, and he was like, hey, this guy's tall, he can run fast, and not very good, but you can teach him to be good. And I was just sitting there one night, I was like, I got to get out. Everyone was going to like Epping pub every Friday night and Saturday night. Everyone, all my buddies, all my schoolmates, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I was like, what if there's something more out there? I've got this opportunity. And I didn't know what T1 was. I mean, I'd watch Blue Chips. I thought I'd step off a plane and someone would be doing my homework and have a bag of cash for me. It was very much not like that. I got there, I didn't have any bedding. I shoved my backpack with clothes and used that as a pillow in my dorm room the first night before we could go to Walmart. So I didn't know anything about it. I just knew I had to get out of town, and it was a great experience. Met my wife there. That was obviously the best thing, but it was by far the best thing. The coach there was an absolute asshole, just a jerk for no reason, a jerk just to be a jerk. And so after 2 years, he we just mutually agreed to, we're done here. Like, I can't deal with you. You can't deal with me. If you're going to just tell me you wish I was dead every other day, I don't want to be around you, bro. Like, literally, I wish I had a gun. I wish I could shoot you in the face. You're the dumbest person I've ever met. That kind of stuff. And I know we'll get to it later. It's like playing in Perth, but I'm a little bit older and wiser when I was playing in Perth, so I knew that they weren't actually going to shoot me. But then I went to Augusta State for 1 year with a couple other Aussies, and that was cool. That was just while my wife was finishing her degree, and we both moved back to Sydney.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And when you moved back to Sydney, and you mentioned the pittance that you were on to get a spot on the West Sydney Razorbacks, like a lot of the other guests that we've had on, all of those except for Lucas Walker, probably just because he's more recent, had to do other jobs. Was that the case for you then, on the outside of training?
I mean, I played ABA for some money, but I didn't. I should have. I wish I did. I earned $806 a month my first year, and I was living with my wife in a $200 a week apartment. So I had $6 at the end of every month just to spend on whatever I wanted. Some months it was a cheeseburger, some months it was a long neck. But she worked, and she worked her ass off, and she worked in the city at University of Sydney, University of New South Wales, something like that, in the office. And she propped us up for years and years. My third year, I'm starting with Dwight McKinnon. Don't forget, McKinnon was the $1 million kid. Like, he got 3 years, $1 million from the Razorbacks the same year they signed me. So he's earning 330. I'm earning 14. I'm getting MF'd by him, Dwight, Bolden, everyone, really, Rucker. And I'm earning $806 a month. They're earning $806 a day. It was rough. It was hard to take. Many a day, Ben Arkell and I drove home in his little 1991 Toyota Seeker and just bitched and moaned about the old guys yelling at us because it wasn't our fault. But I didn't. But then I got paid $7,000, which blew my mind, to play for the Bankstown Bruins. How am I going to get half as much? But then my third year, I'm starting in the grand final earning $27,000. So I went 14, 20, 27. And it was like, and then the Pigs offered me 40 for one. And I was like, what? No. And I got almost double that from Hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking like the early 2000s here for the listeners, in terms of that. So we're like 21 years ago, but and that brings up an important point. And I'm trying feverishly at the moment to hunt down Jacob Holmes and get him on the podcast, because a lot of the what's that?
He and I just went to the home opener, the Phoenix Suns home opener this year.
Yeah,
God, it was good to see.
Yeah,
he's the greatest.
Yeah, because he's doing, from all reports, and even the people on the podcast saying that the Players Association are doing a really good job these days of making sure players are looked after better now than it was 20 years ago. And whether it's payment, whether it's access to physio, whether it's uni courses, like Lucas Walker was saying, Jesse Wagstaff's done like 3 degrees in his 15-year career through the help of the Players Association, Yeah. So Jacob, if you end up listening to this, mate, we need you on to have a chat about it.
And I was texting. It was my birthday 2 days ago. We were texting.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because it's something that yeah, awesome. Thanks, Russ. Because I think that side of things, unless you're having a conversation with a player, us as sort of on the outside, we don't hear or see about that sort of stuff. So I think it deserves a bit of recognition. So yeah, that would be great if you could help us out with that. And
he
then
deserves all the recognition. He did it himself. No one else. He and I were in Townsville. I snapped my leg in half. I go, you got to call Jacob Holmes. He didn't have a job. Best thing ever, because he and I spent the next 3 years together, and he just goes, you know what? We got to get this players union. And I go, I don't know about we, but yeah, you do. And he and I sat every single morning for 2 years, and he'd bounce things off me. He'd say, I'm going to meet this person. I'm going to meet this. Can you believe what this guy said? Can you believe what whoever the commissioner was at the time? Jacob Holmes did everything that all these players are getting, every import that's getting all this money, every player that's getting all this support. It is Jacob Holmes sitting in RSL Stadium in Townsville in the locker room before we went out to practice, after practice, phone calls, flying to Sydney on his days off to meet with people. He did it for no personal gain and at great personal expense to build that players association. And no one sees that.
Yeah.
And then we go to the Blitz and he goes, guys, we need you to sign up. And I think Waxy was one of them who goes, I don't know, this is kind of bullshit. And I love Waxy. He's an incredible man. And why wouldn't you say this is bull crap when it was bull crap before then? And I had to stand up and say, you know what? No. You don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Give this man your time, give him your energy, because now it's killer. Like, it's killer. I would have loved to have it. My first practice, I'd never met Scott McGregor in my life. my first West Sydney practice, he goes, well, I hope you signed a 1-year deal because the league's going to fold this year. That was in 2001. Like, that's how tenuous it was year to year. Like, McKinnon signing these $300,000 deals. Really, Rucker, Dwight, that was my world. But guys, Drewy, Hoagie, Anstey, they're signing big deals. They weren't sure they were going to see the second year of that deal. The league was so shaky. And Jacob Holmes, and so when the shaky, ownership is not caring about the players and their welfare for after basketball. Jacob Holmes just said, no, that's not right. And he spent 2 years of his life changing that for every player in this league.
Yeah, that's great forethought. And that's exactly the reason I want to shine a light on it, is because you have these individuals that exactly what you just said, grow these sort of things. I mean, we've got another example at the moment of Liam Santamaria with the Next Stars program, just putting his heart and soul and everything into it. So you've got to have these people, that really push it. But at the end of the day, they do deserve the recognition that they've put in behind the scenes. Now, I will get, just because I'm cognizant of time, I will get to some questions that we had from some of the listeners. So I picked two out, one from each of the places you played from. So, areas, I should say, because you played for two clubs in Sydney. So from Matt Skinner on the Instagram, he asked a pretty general question. He said, Razorbacks or Kings, and why? And I said, do you mean in terms of favourite? Do you mean in terms of experience there? So I'll leave that kind of open-ended. Obviously, there are different stages. You're obviously Razorbacks, you're kind of getting your foot in the door. Sydney Kings, you're kind of, this is time to shine stuff. Where do you want to take that, mate?
It's an awesome question. Different reasons. Like I said, it was like the Beatles at the Razorbacks. Those guys were incredible. They were so good. Like, they were so talented that I'd have games at 26 points, 28 points off 13 layups or 14 layups. That was it. All I'd do was catch and finish. And I'd have 28 points, and they'd go, Russ, you got the $250 player of the game. And I know John Riley, Rucker, all the guys who were passing me the ball are like, that's bull crap. Whatever, I'm earning 14 grand, bro. That was cool. That was super cool. We made 2 grand finals. That was super cool to play with Ben Arkell, play in front of mum and dad, play in front of a lot of people. And we were at Homebush, so it was like a lot of my buddies would come for $10, $5 and watch the games. Sydney Kings was different. It was gorging. It was skin folds every Monday. It was Fat Club. It was boomers. It was every day mattered. Every drill mattered. It was intense. If you ask my wife, it probably wasn't a whole bunch of fun being around me for those 2 years. And like I said, I was worshipping at the altar of Gorge. I mean, I threw Clint Reed to the ground one game. I don't even remember doing it. Julian Kazoo, who I love, and I love Clint Reed. Like, Julian in the dog pile punches me right in the dick. And I'm like, Jul, what the hell? But I'd thrown Clint to the ground real quick. I get fined $750. We're at the post-game function with the Kings. One of the board members goes, what was the result? I go, got fined $750. I don't have $750 cash. I live in Sydney. He goes, stay here. He goes around, gets $750, gets $800 cash, comes up, gives it to me. I never got the notice for the fine. I had that $800 on my fridge for like 6 months. Made $800 from throwing Clint Reed to the ground.
Well, I know Clint
so
listens to this podcast, so he'll appreciate that one.
He'll
hit you up for the cash.
We're all West Sydney guys. Anthony Sissinjara lives over here in LA, and we caught up, and they're amazing guys. But I was so gorgeous, like the best. It's mind control, man. It's mind control. He has you buy into this thing. And I didn't even, like, I'm coming off the bench. I'm playing a role. I think I should be more, but I'm so bought in. So it was 2 totally different experiences. And then it ended so badly in Sydney. I was on the back page of the Daily Telegraph one time in my entire life. And look it up. You can Google it. It's me, my wife, my 2 kids looking destitute because we couldn't pay our mortgage.
Yeah, right.
And Macquarie Bank calls me. He goes, "Hey, is this Russ Hinder? I just saw your article on the back page of the Daily Telegraph. Yeah, don't worry about your mortgage. We're going to put it on pause." I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Do you want me to call Tim Morrissey and tell him?" He goes, "No, no, 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 no. This is between us. Just don't worry about your mortgage. We'll put it on pause until you get another job." This
Wow.
is all what happens behind the scenes. Like you said, the whole
Yeah.
reason for the podcast. Like I've got a billion of these stories.
Yeah. It's just
Anyway,
phenomenal.
sorry about that.
No, no, don't apologize. That's crazy. And it kind of brings up another thing. I guess in this day and age, if you want a bit more money, um, a lot of players consider other options, whether it's going playing in Japan or playing in Europe and those sort of things. Was that ever a consideration for you to go elsewhere and play?
Yeah, when you're pretty bad at the sport, it doesn't come up a lot. You're just holding on for dear life with the job you have. So, um, like I get it over here all the time. You didn't want to play in the NBA? I'm like, nah. I was like, millions of dollars versus tens of dollars. Give me the tens of dollars and traveling in rental cars and sleeping on rollouts. And it came up once, like there was a D2 in Paris or something, but we just had our baby. And no, I was more than happy to be in Australia. I love Australia. I wanted to be in Australia. I wanted to play in the NBL. I never thought I'd play in the NBL. I never in a million years thought I'd play in the NBL. So to be playing in the NBL, flying around, running out 10,000 people yelling for your team and stuff, that was more than enough for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And I think it, it it's something that helps us to appreciate you guys a little bit more, because when you're not in the league, essentially you're out of sight, out of mind. So, there's some players that come back and play for the Boomers, every 3 or 4 years. That, like Brock Modem, for instance, we see very, very little of him. Very good player. I remember attending an All-Australian camp and watching him as a junior, and just a beast. But playing over in Spain and various different countries, you just don't, until they come back for an Australia camp or something, you just don't see them. So I think, by having yourself in the league, like I know you're pretty humble and you think you're sucked and you all that sort of stuff, but a lot of us have great memories. Hence, you're on my list to get on here and remember watching your play. So don't undersell yourself on the fact that we as fans, I guess, really appreciated having you in the league and the personality you brought, as well as the skill level. And that'll lead me perfectly on to our second question, because it is from Townsville. It is from someone you might actually recall. He did run his own podcast up there, Rodney Anderson. And I think he ran it with JR.
Yeah.
So, and
we're ordered by Ian Smythe to shut it down.
Right. Is there a story with that?
Why? Why? Just because they were talking about the Crocs and they didn't want it. Everyone was like, and they threatened to fine or fire JR if he kept doing it.
Yeah. Was that just because he was doing his own thing?
Show.
Yeah.
It was because they didn't like anyone doing anything that wasn't Crocs controlled, and then the Crocs go belly up, and it's like, well, you maybe should have worried about your own house a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Anderson's the greatest man on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Greatest man.
Excellent. Well, he'll be very pleased to hear that. He was very excited to know that we were having you on. And so he's obviously asked some questions, and he's actually given me credit to Rodney. He's given me the debrief, I guess, of that game that Homicide created, Croc Nation. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put it in the show notes because it's one of those, I guess, pardon the pun, but like a little time capsule to go back and watch. And fortunately, we do. It's a bit of grainy footage. It's not like we have these days with the HD, but there is some great footage of the game. Essentially, it's a playoff game. It's Townsville go over to Perth. Some things have been, there's a bit of back and forth in the lead up to it, and the stadium's kind of hostile from the start. Doesn't take long for Corey Homicide Williams, who we all know if you didn't know him back when he was playing, an MVP and a very good player, but obviously now on the commentary side of things and still making headlines, sort of a walking headline. And JR, John Riley, goes bonkers in that game. First player to hit 10 threes in a playoffs game, just shooting the ball unconscious. And even to this day, everyone knows that the Perth crowd's pretty rowdy. They're right on top of you, even at RAC Arena, which is a much bigger arena these days. And that's part of their success, to be honest, not taking any credit away from Perth as an organisation, but it's like having a sixth player on the court, really, when you go into a crowd that intimidating. So Rodney goes on to say, I'll just read it straight out. The guys had so much shit from the crowd in the stadium back then. A guy even handed the physio Cam Whiting a handwritten note on the bench during the game, and it just said, "F off, you C's." I think we can all tell what that means.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the guys ended up staying in the locker room for over an hour because there were so many people outside the stadium ready to kill them. There is a clip which I actually put on our Insta last night, but I'll put it in the show notes as well, of after the game. The fans, usually after a loss, you're pretty quick to leave the arena. They were pretty keen to hang around and get into Corey, the Corey's a wanker chant, which is kind of the Australian thing you do when you don't like an athlete. It's someone's a wanker. And Corey didn't take a backward step. John was pretty happy to just chat about the game, but Corey was shirt off and going at it. And then we go into the locker room, and I'm not sure what you had sticky taped to your jersey, but there was do you recall that?
It's like a promotion with a local computer guy back in Townsville.
Right. Okay.
And if anyone got to mention, I think it was like Dennis's computers, you get a free monitor. I don't give a crap. I'll do anything. It was all entertainment. That's why Corey and I sort of got along so well. JR was allowed to do what JR does, and which was hoop.
Yeah.
And Corey and I were more than happy to take because if they're yelling at me, they're ignoring JR.
Yes, that is true. That's a great way to think of it, actually, because you're taking the heat off someone who can just go about their business. Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah. That's a very different perspective on it. And I did think it was funny, again, the listeners can go back and look at it, but I think Andrew Gaze walks into the change rooms, and the first thing he says to you is, "All right, can we get some common sense out of you, Russ, for a second?" And he obviously, and you gave him a good common sense answer, but it was just, I think it was just it just spoke volumes of how people, knew your character and all those sort of things. And the other thing I want to touch on with that, and I'm really glad Rodney brought up that game, not just because of obviously the passion that was in it and the intensity and the kind of rivalry stuff, and leagues need that. You know what I mean? Like, it can't all just be good players. Like, if you have good rivalries like that helps build a league. We've got it now with Melbourne United and the Sydney Kings. Sydney Kings are starting to create the same thing Perth have got over there. In terms of a bit of a fortress, and then you've got, as much as a lot of people don't like Paul Smith, the owner of the Kings. The reality is he's out there and he's promoting the sport in an amazing way. Yeah,
that's what we need. Like, they had Nick Marvin. I wanted to play at Perth. That's what people don't know. Sydney Kings go down, and I'm talking to, who was the coach? Big white guy, American, Neil Henry.
Connor Henry.
That was the Connor Henry.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Connor Henry. I'm like, I'll come play for Perth. I want to play for Perth. And he's like, I don't think we have any money. And I'm like, I don't care. I want to be there. like, I want to be in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I'd just gone from losing the grand final, 10,000 people. I was like, I want that. End up at Townsville, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah, that
yeah,
speaks volumes. I think if you create a place where people want to come and play, sometimes money can become irrelevant. And I mean, I'm not sure if it can happen, but that's something probably Illawarra need to look at sort of doing, is creating that place where players want to come, because they're never going to have, well, for the most part, it's unlikely they're going to have the biggest budget in
no,
the league. So you've got to create that place, and I think Gorgon did that for a period of time because people want to be with Gorgon. They want to play with Gorgon. They want to learn from him. They want to be in that environment. And yeah, I'm not sort of sure where I'm going with that, but I think that's you just touched on a really good point.
I got one for you real quick.
Yeah.
My auntie lived in Perth. I got family in Perth, and a couple of days before, a reporter calls me and goes, "Hey, what's with Perth?" I go, "It's the best. It's the best environment other than Townsville. It's the best environment in the league." They were there, bro. It wasn't like RCA. You say the new big gym.
Yeah.
There's like 4 feet. There's room to walk. There was not room to walk, but you could feel them breathing their stank breath, their drunk beer, Jim Beam swilling, swan beer drinking breath on the back of your neck. And I know I can't say what they were saying about my son, my wife, my mother, Carol. No, you don't know. If you can come up in your own private time with the most messed up thing you would ever say to a human being, double that. Okay? So a reporter calls me and goes, I go, "Look, it's the best atmosphere ever. They're lunatics, security, you'll look, and they're like pouring beer around you. They're flicking pretzels at the back of your head. And you look, and security's there just giggling. And so I said something like, but I'd never let my auntie come to the game. We go to play that year. They go starting Corey Williams, boo, John Riley, boo, Brad Williams, boo, whoever, boo. The house lights go off. Spotlight on the middle of the court. The announcer walks to center court, goes, "Our next starter had some things to say in the paper today." And he reads the article.
Oh, jeez.
And he goes, "And Russell Hinder said they're a bunch of animals that are out of control, and they're a bunch of heathens, and they belong in prison." So whatever I said, I don't know. I was firing up. And he goes, "Introducing number 10, Russell Hinder." Holy shit. I don't know if it's that game. It might be that game. Like, we played a lot of really rough and tumble games over there, man. But if they were yelling at me and Corey, JR, B-Rad, Dan Egan was on the team. They get to Kelvin Robertson, Mick Cedar, they get to do what they do. And that was awesome. That was what they needed to do. And I had broad enough shoulders, and I know I'm ugly, and I know my wife is too hot for me. I know all of this. I know I'm not very good. My guys can do what we do, and they did it. And JR was phenomenal.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Like 2 years. So we had a lot of time to get that man, JR. Lived at his house.
Yeah, if you go back and look at that game for the listeners, just take out if we take out all the craziness that happened, it just brings back so many memories of so many like really good salts of the earth sort of players that you kind of forget how great they were. Like even someone like an Adam Capehorn that's now over in the States, drilled some massive threes in the third quarter of that game. Sean Redditch, who played down here in Victoria in what's now the NBL 1, was a Seabull back then. So that's how he came to Australia and was just going like 35 and 25 double-doubles like in games. And you're like, how is this guy not in the NBL yet? And then goes on to have a crazy career because it's just, I think it was because he was maybe an undersized big, something like that. But yeah, it was just...
because it's so good.
Yeah.
And he's short and he destroyed every time. He was awesome. And I wanted to be him. And I wanted to be his set. I wanted to be as cool as him. I wanted to score as equally as him. He's a man. I just graduated AFU actually like last year. I had a great time. I know. So his from Australia. He played here, he played there. Like, yeah, no crap.
Yeah.
I hate him.
Yeah. Phenomenal player. I might just get you to move around your laptop for us, Russ, if that's what you've got there, just because we lost a bit of audio there, but we'll catch back onto it. But yeah, Sean Redditch, phenomenal player. So thanks for Rodney Anderson for bringing that up. What will it's definitely something that you go back in the archives and check that out and have a look over that. I guess in sort of, I mean, we could talk for hours and hours on this. We'll probably have to get you back at some point. I'm sure the listeners would love it because these stories, as we've touched on already, are stories that we don't hear. We don't really hear unless we ask you to come on and share this sort of stuff, or we catch you, sitting on a stool at a bar and we end up having a chat about stuff. You just don't hear about it. I guess looking back on your careers, we've sort of spent the last hour and a bit doing. Is there any sort of overwhelming feeling you have about it? Is it, obviously I can tell you're very grateful for it, considering, and you acknowledge, that you came from, not having touched a basketball at 15 when there's other kids that have sort of been obsessed from the age of 5 and dreamed of playing NBL, dreamed of playing for Australia. And then you just have this sliding doors moment that you, to your parents' credit, encouraged you to go through. Yeah, how do you feel about it all, I guess?
Great question. And I think Lucas spoke about this. I'll never forget spending 3 hours on a flight from Sydney to Townsville, wherever it was, playing a game on my phone. I'm sitting next to Jacob Holmes, and he's highlighting law documents. And I look back at that, I just want to take a really long walk off a short pier. Like, what a moron. What a moron. Because I got to 34 years old, and I was essentially a high school graduate, but I had a wife and 3 kids. I had no experience doing anything other than putting a ball in a hoop. And because I was in this little cocoon, this little bubble of Townsville where everyone pats you on the back and tells you, hey, when you retire, I got you. I'll give you a job. And then I retire and it's crickets. And I was halfway down the path of becoming a police officer. Still to this day, I'm a little bit like, maybe I should have done that. But I look back, and so then there's a part of me that just in the last few years where I turn to my wife and I say, maybe I should I have done it? You know what I'm saying? And that sounds really crap. And that sounds so shit because of people like you, like the salt of basketball fandom that, I walked out of I used to call it the Snatch, the State Netball and the Hockey Centre in Melbourne. And it was double birds. I was double birding the crowd because they were booing so loud. Like, it's people like that. Like, I'm saying, without you, I don't do that. And I love that. I love that competitiveness. But I was 34 and I didn't know how to open Excel. I didn't know who's going to hire someone without a talent. Like, yeah, I can put a ball in a hoop and I can talk and I can be a goofball. You don't want me working for your company. And that's where it just gets back to Jacob Holmes and what Perth were doing. Perth were doing this 20 years ago with their players. You practice from 8 in the morning until 2, 12 or 1 or something. Then the day's yours. You have to go and work, or you have to go to uni, or you have to do something. No one else was doing that. No one else. And I regret it. I regret it so massively. I was so stupid. I should have been studying. I should have been working. I should have been doing something to upskill myself and put myself and my family in a better position. But I was just so happy playing basketball. And I hope to Jesus that one player in the NBL hears that today and goes, okay, like if I can leave anything after running my mouth for so long and ruining your podcast and all of that, if we can get one guy to just go, shit, you know what? Yeah, I will. And like, so anyway, there have been days where I've said I wish I didn't play.
Yeah.
They really have. 44 years old, and now I'm a supervisor at a pool company, but 2 years ago I was just cleaning pool. I was just pool cleaner. And there were days I'm like, freaking A, if I'd started at a bank when I was 21, I'd be a manager. I'd be running it. So,
but on the same note, like you said earlier, you'd be miserable because a desk job doesn't suit your personality, you know. So
I go, how am I ever going to tell stories when I got a storyteller, mate? Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Story today now.
Yeah. And I think, you know, whether that's something that, you know, you can tap into, you know, over the next, you know, 10, 20, 30 years, you know, in terms of, you know, whether it's a mentoring role with, you know, the Players Association or, you know, just letting players know your story will help a hell of a lot because well, no, I shouldn't say these days because it probably has happened over every era. But, you know, with kids now not just playing for their clubs back in Australia, but going like there's a school academy in every council area. There's, you know, they're playing basketball 7 days a week now. You know, if you're in the, you know, Vic Metro or New South Wales Metro team, so you're doing the state program, you're playing rep, you know, you're doing the, you know, ITC type programs in the morning at 6 a.m. Like it's almost all or nothing. Like you got to make it or because, you know, kids are missing out on school now. So their last 2 periods are going and doing the basketball academy, you know, and you see it in tennis a lot. You know, with some tennis players I've worked with, you know, you can go through these crazy programs and if you don't make it, you kind of, not only do you not make it, but then there's not a program or something to help you figure it out. Like, what do I go do now? You know, and it's just like, well, good luck. Yeah. So I think it's great.
That's what it was whenever anyone retired. Like when BJ Carter, Luke Kendall, all those guys lost their job when the Sydney Kings went under in 2008. It was like, see ya, bye. That was it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's changed, but it's rough. But everyone sees you on TV. They see you on a court. So they think you have it all figured out. And nothing figured out. Still don't have anything figured out, but I'm a little more at peace with my life and my decisions and all of that now.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is it sounds like you've got a good family life. And on that note, you mentioned to me off the recording, your daughter's one of your daughters had the 15-year-old had a tournament in Chicago, and she's 6'6" already at 15. Is basketball something that she would like to go down the professional route, or it's just for fun? Or
she's crushing. Yeah, she's going to be really good. She's going to be really good. She's going to be she's going into 10th grade, and she's really good. My son, he's 6'10". He's going to college, and she's going into 10th grade, and she's got a chance.
Yeah.
She's got a chance.
That's
really
awesome.
Cool to watch.
Cool. So you just remind us of her name,
because an education and a plan B.
Yeah.
That.
We'll keep a well. That's it. That's the lesson in it. You know, is you can. I think that's a benefit of having parents that have been through stuff is you don't have to learn it via trial and error. You know, they can give you the wisdom. It's up to you to take it if you're a, you know, up and coming kid, but you can give them the wisdom of that. And I guess lastly, do you still watch a bit of hoops? Do you pay attention to what's going on over with Australia? Do you think we have a chance at a gold medal in August in the World Cup?
I actually played with Patty and Joe and Delhi and that when I was kind of on the way out and they were coming in. They were all still at college or still young like Joe. I just couldn't love what those guys have done with that program anymore. they have grabbed it by the back of the neck, and I think the sky is the absolute limit for those guys. I love what they're doing. I watch the boomers incessantly. I just love that whole culture. They got Brad Davis and John Riley. They got all people I know, Gorge, involved, and it's just the most magical place to be around is that boomers program. Mike Kelly, who's incredible. And then the NBL I watch I watch a lot of Instagram, all of that, follow that. I even watch the NBL one, watch these young fellas doing it. And it's really cool to see what's become of what I was sort of a minute part of 20 years ago. So it's cool to watch, and I hope that the players have taken care of themselves and looking after themselves and preparing, because you got to get ready for, you're going to walk into a whole bunch of rooms and no one's going to give a crap who you are. And that sucks. And you spend every day knowing whether you win or lose, every minute. I won that drill. I won that drill. I won this day. I won that. I got told I was good. I told I was crap. I was told I was feedback. One day that all stops. And you have to self-motivate. You have to self-promote. You have to get yourself out and work, and get yourself a job and do it all for yourself. And it sucks. It sucks so bad. Especially for someone who did it. So I went 0 to 17 living life. 17 moved to the AIS, did that for 17 years. Basketball, being told where to be, what to do, how much to do it for 17 years till I was 34, and then nothing.
Yeah.
And it's hard. So thankfully I had Jen and the kids and a support network of family that surrounded me with love, and there are some hard days once you're done playing.
Yeah. No, that's phenomenal. I really appreciate the last hour and a bit of just how vulnerable you've been.
Sorry.
No, it's phenomenal, man. We'll definitely have to get you back on at some point, because your story's amazing and you're good at telling it. You're a great storyteller. And that's exactly what this podcast is about players' careers and not just the upsides. Otherwise, we just try and get Andrew Gaze on every week, right? And just talk about point scoring records and MVPs and things like that, right? It's about the real stuff that goes on, and people that are willing to actually go down that path and share it and just say it is what it is. This is what happened. This is how I felt at the time. So I really, really appreciate it. Want to thank you for taking the time after work to sit down with us, and I'll let you know when we release this in the next couple of days, because I know there's a few followers on us that you've actually mentioned players' names, and so that again helps players to then think about their career. And I think there's a saying I think it's the movie Remember the Titans, the NFL movie, and they talk about reflection is the better part of a champion, and it's, if you got to take the time to look back on careers. I find with players, we're only 4 or 5 episodes in, but every person that I've spoken to after the recording or after the podcast has said that it was quite a therapeutic, cathartic experience to look back and, just get that stuff off their chest and just relive that sort of stuff. So I won't rattle on too much longer, but thanks again. And if anyone wants to sort of see what the Players Association are doing, because Russ has chatted a fair bit about that. You can actually just follow them. It's as simple as looking on Insta as a fan. Obviously we don't get involved with them as fans, but they are quite active now and letting us know what they're doing. They've got awards nights coming up, and it just gets you to see the back end of what's going on with players, because at the end of the day, we all benefit. We all benefit from that at the end of the day. So thanks again, Russ, and all the best with the kids progressing through their careers and with the pool business, and keep making us laugh, mate. Share some more stuff on Instagram, because we find your stuff funny, mate.
It's I got stories for days, sitting in a McDonald's in rural China with Andrew Gaze on one of those Tigers tours, him telling me the story of him and Hoagie when they found out that Drewy was going to carry the flag. And I'm bawling. He's bawling. We're all bawling in rural China in a McDonald's, like one of my core memories. And I got a bunch of stories. So I can't thank you enough for having me on. I can't thank you enough for doing what you're doing. And if you're helping some guys get some things out, because it is pretty dark, man. There's some dark things from going from being quasi famous, if you want to say that, to not being, to no one giving a crap, and someone saying, "Hey, how many radio ads did you sell today, you idiot?" And you're like, "None." They're like, "Oh, you suck." So it's not all peaches and cream, but I'm one of the fortunate ones that got to put my hand up and say, "Hey, I'm out," as opposed to 80% of the people who I know who they were told, "Yeah, no more. We don't want you."
Yeah.
So that's dark. I thank you, man. So keep doing what you're doing. Anything you need from me, please reach out. Let's rock and roll, and let's hope I didn't torpedo this podcast too badly, man.
No, well, you torpedoed it, but not the way you thought. You've sent it up. You haven't sent it down, mate. So good work, and we'll chat again soon, mate. Take care.
Can't wait, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Hardwood Time Capsule podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to support the program, and we'll see you in the next episode.